Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Indian Textile Journal's webinar, Reviewing the Success Story of Textiles. I'm Pratap Padode, Editor-in-Chief of Indian Textile Journal and founder ASAP Info Global Group, also publishers of Industrial Product Finder, Construction World, Infrastructure Today. I hope all of you are safe and healthy and are keeping lockdown blues at bay by visiting our website, indiantextilejournal.com. India's textile sector is one of the oldest industries in Indian economy, dating back several centuries. The Indian textiles industry currently estimated at around 180 to 200 billion dollars. India's textile and apparel exports stood at nearly 40 billion in FY19 and expected to increase to 82 billion by 2021. India's share in the global textiles export is just 5%, which is minuscule as compared to China's share of 38%. Even the share of apparel exports in the country's total textile exports have fallen sharply from 51% to 45% in 2019. So it's been tough. I mean, we have great potential, but we have not been able to get to that potential. Recently, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs gave its approval to set up the National Technical Textiles Mission with an outlay of 1,500 crores, with a view to positioning the country as a global leader in technical textiles. And the mission has a 4-year implementation period from 2021 to 23-24. A lot of initiatives have been taken by the government, and there are lots of schemes to promote exports. Yet we need to still recreate that success story that we are talking about. So we have an eminent panel with us today to help us guide us through this. What can be the areas that we should be able to focus on in order to get the glory back. So here is our, and I'll introduce the panel to you in just a moment. Here is our old logo. It's Indian Textile Journal is 130 years old. The oldest publication in the country, oldest magazine at least in the country. And now we are coming to a new logo. We're launching a new logo during the lockdown. And here is the first preview of the new logo. So the Indian Textile Journal magazine is going to carry this logo. You can notice the Tiranga on the eye, obviously reflecting the Indian nationalist spirit. So that's the new logo for you, ladies and gentlemen, for Indian Textile Journal. So here are some of our covers that have made an impact during the year. A ton of crisis, cotton of crisis, shot in the arm, automation, value addition. So 130 years, good extensive readership, first and largest circulated textile magazine, our website carrying now the news on COVID-19 and how companies are battling that out as well. Please go to indiantextilejournal.com. And let me introduce you to our panelists here. We have Mr. Ashok Juneja, National President, the Textile Association. We have Mr. Gurudas Aras, Director, ATE Enterprises. Mr. Kapil Patare, Director, VIP Clothing. Mr. Raunak Rugani, the Chairman of Synthetic and Rayon Textile Export Promotion Council. And Mr. Navdeep Singh Sodhi, Garzi Consulting Engineers. So welcome to the panelists. Thank you very much for joining us on this discussion on how do we get the glory of the textile industry back. Here's a quick update on the textile industry. And we have questions which we are going to discuss with our panelists, which have been laid out here. So let me start with the first question on how do we see the fiber, concept. This is the question. I want to address it to Mr. Rugani. Yeah. While cotton contributes more than half share in overall textile, what are the challenges what are the challenges before Indian man-made fiber textile industries, Mr. Rugani?
Right. Good morning, everyone. The first thing is to achieve our vision, cotton and MMF have to walk hand in hand. In fact, all the entire value chain has to be together. So there cannot be any differential between the entire value chain. This year as well, in 1920, we have recorded $6 billion worth of exports on the MMF front. The silver lining has been an 11% growth in the fabric segment, wherein the value added segment has seen a growth. Now, as we're talking about challenges, the first challenge is, you see, most of the world's imports in this segment, in the MMF segment, has been in knits, non-wovens, and technical textiles. India is surely weak on those fronts. So the first challenge would be to ramp up our knitting, our processing, our non-woven segment, and our R&D on the technical textiles, and deliver to the world what we really want. The other challenge is fiber neutrality. MMF always has had a history of high taxation, so that's one of the challenges we face on and off. The third one is inverted duty structure, wherein the raw materials are taxed at the GST rate is 18%, and then the yarns are at 12%, and the fabric is at 5%, so which leads to a lot of accumulated input tax credit, which also blocks a lot of working capital. So that's one of the things. High rate of interest is another challenge, this being capital intensive. The other thing is there's no refund of GST on capital goods. Now, since this is capital intensive, we need to have investments. So that's one of the challenges all the investors also face. The other thing is this is a fragmented segment. We've got clusters across the country. Now we have to work in accordance to what we have. 60% of these of our exports are through the smaller segments or the small and medium scale exporters. So we need to see how our exports maximize from this segment so that we can actually achieve the growth. Setting up vertical units is going to take a lot of time, and setting up mass scale production capacity is also going to take a lot of time. But we have these smaller clusters, smaller fragments, which can actually deliver. So that would be another challenge, and that's about it. And we're just hoping for the best. Thank you.
Mr. Juneja, I would like you to comment on how is the Indian textile industry placed in terms of modernization and automation. Mr. Juneja?
You to
Yeah. Good morning. Wish you all healthy and safe time ahead. Let us hope we will be back to the normal as soon as possible by the grace of God. I think what Pratap has asked regarding the automation and modernization, I think it is relevant in today's scenario. And it has been seen that this is whatsoever the industry, who has done the automation and modernization along with the time, they have survived. And I think for the growth and competitiveness, I think this modernization and automation is the key of the success. If you are saying in the Asian country where India is stand, I think we have to divide Asia into the two regions, say China and without China. And today, I think 70% of the manufacturing of the textiles, maybe 70% or more, in Asian countries. And that major portion is from China. So no doubt we can say China is much ahead of us in all respects. And China is a major textile producer ahead of India. And then then we have to divide further into the three parts, we can say, without China also. We have to divide into the South Asia and the Asian countries. And we can say India is ahead of in South Asia, where it is a Bangladesh, or Pakistan or Sri Lanka. As well, then again we have to divide into the segment wise. We can say clearly in spinning we are at par or even ahead of the other countries in the technology on the is concerned. Maybe definitely behind China, but definitely we are much at the par, or we may be ahead of the other Asian country as far the spinning is concerned. India is the second largest producer of the spinning also. Okay. And so we can say in spinning we are at par, but definitely when we are saying we are at par, there is we cannot say there is no scope for further automation. Definitely there are still further scope of automation, but why we have not gone, that is also another question, because we were having a cheap labor, and there was every automation is cost. Then we have to do the balancing between the labor cost and the automation. So definitely still there is a scope in the spinning also, but we can say as on date, definitely we are good in the spinning, whereas the spinning is concerned, but still there is scope of there, whether we have to see techno-commercial feasibility, whether we should go or we should not go. And coming next to the weaving and the processing, definitely whatsoever the new unit are coming, whether it is which are coming in the organizing sector, which are coming in the big group, definitely they are coming with the latest technology. But whatsoever the existing this installation is there, they need to do the lot of modernization and the automation. Now I am coming back to the next, we can say this apparel and this garment. Now after China, Bangladesh is the second largest producer of or exporter of the garment, and whereas we are concerned, definitely we need lot to be done in the apparel and garment technology. We are much behind even with the Bangladesh, leave apart China. And next, coming into the Asian countries, I think Vietnam, and the Vietnam is the now biggest growing company, not only in the garment, I think the total textile, because lot of investment from China is coming to Vietnam, and they have the strength of Chinese investment also. So I don't have any doubt, maybe Vietnam will surpass Bangladesh in coming time, because they are growing fast in the technology and apparel and garment. So in the nutshell, we can say in spinning we are good enough, but still there is a scope, but we are good enough to compete, and we are the leading in spinning. Weaving and the processing need to be done. Lot of still there are scope to be done, but definitely garmenting, etc., we need to be done lot. Looking into the technology, I think we are much behind Bangladesh and Vietnam and even Sri Lanka or other countries, whether definitely these are small countries, whether Cambodia or Myanmar and all these things. But definitely Bangladesh, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, they are, no doubt in saying, I think they are far ahead in technology. If just we say, even the basic machine in the stitching machine, they have a lot of the attachment and all these things, but still we are working with the basic machines only. So just to conclude here, I think we have a lot to done in the apparel and the garment, and maybe even I can give an example. Definitely automation and modernization will pay. Even Vietnam, maybe the pay, salary and wages are more than India, but still they are more competitive because they have adopted the technology and their production rates, etc., are better than India. So in conclude, spinning we are okay, and we can do further better. Definitely in the weaving and processing, we have to do, still we have to upgrade our technology, but definitely apparel and garment we have to do lot to compete with the Bangladesh, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, etc.
Right, Mr. Juneja. I think thank you for giving us that full overview. But I think it is very clear that we can't be relying on the legacy advantage and therefore believing that we are going to, somehow turn supreme, because a whole lot of the neighboring countries have, performed far better in terms of efficiency through technology, through other competitive measures that each one has. And I think we there has to be a much more emphasis. I believe Bangladesh has 60% of its GDP coming out of garment exports, which is a huge number for a country relying so extensively on a particular industry. And textiles being one of the most important industries, with employing 45 million people, which is also going to go up. I think there a lot needs to be done, a lot of focus needs to be brought in. So I want to move to Mr. Gurudas Aras, and what would you comment on the amended technology upgradation fund scheme, which has been brought in order to emphasize the need for technology and facilitate that, Mr. Aras? Mr. Aras, I think you need to unmute. Mr. Aras?
Okay. Good morning to everybody. Well, before going to amended, hello?
Yes, go on.
Hello?
Yes, go on.
Hello?
We can hear you, Mr. Aras.
Yeah, yeah. So good morning to everybody. Yeah. So first of all, going to the amended technology fund, I would like to go to the purpose of the technology upgradation fund, which was launched by Government of India. Basically, the purpose was to make India competitive in the world market and boost the textile exports. Now, let's divide it between before 2016 and after 2016, because in 2016, government had to amend the technology upgradation fund, because before 2016, most of the advantage was taken by the industry segment of spinning, which was already modern. But in India, as everybody knows, the weak link always had been weaving and processing. However, before 2016, the entire benefit went to spinning sector. Also in weaving, a lot of second-hand machinery has come. The statistics shows that as high as 85% of the looms coming to India were second-hand and very cheap machines. And therefore, the purpose of the technology upgradation fund was not served at all. Now, my question is that have we succeeded with the technology fund? The answer is yes and no. In 2016, government has amended the technology fund and removed spinning from it, because spinning has already achieved a very strong position in the world market. In the exports, India has roughly 25% of the market, and spinning is fairly modernized. What is needed was the funding for weaving, processing, and garmenting. Therefore, the new amended technology upgradation fund has been given for weaving preparatory, processing, garmenting, and technical textile. Now, when I say to some extent we have benefited, because government has so far disbursed about 27,000 crores, and to larger extent weaving and processing could get benefit to some extent. However, India could not come to the quality requirement of the world, because most of the machines which came were second-hand and of low technology. Even after 2016 amended technology fund, there are still some scrupulous elements who are importing second-hand machine, painting them and showing as new machines. I think our industry has to be very serious. This fund government is earmarking for going to right places so that our value chain becomes very strong. I say no for one reason, that it has not succeeded, because as you know, today the position of textile machinery industry is such that nearly 60% of the machines get imported. In spinning, we are more or less self-sufficient. Weaving, virtually 90% of the high-speed weaving machines and preparatory machines get imported to India. Same is the case with processing. Nearly 60% of machines get imported. Garment, nearly 90% gets imported. Now, the problem is, unless we develop our indigenous textile machinery manufacturing, we are really not going to benefit. The textile sector will have to pay a high capital cost for importing these machines. And therefore, if we really want to allow the real benefit of amended technology fund to go to industry and become stronger, I think the most important is simultaneously government should also develop a fund for textile machinery industry to develop the machines indigenously. There's one more thing why I said no, is because there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in this, clearances of ATUF applications. There are still top European machinery manufacturers who are still left out of the ATUF list for some flimsy reasons. And this is typically a red tapeism of India. I think if you are serious enough about growing, I think red tape has to be replaced by red carpet. And this is where I think we are really having a blotted history. If we want to really take advantage, and textile industry has to compete globally, according to me, weaving, processing, garmenting, and technical textile should really get funding, and genuine people should be able to invest so that they can compete globally. And therefore, I said that the success answer is yes and no. I think we'll have to really fix these areas where the disadvantage has happened. Industry could not take benefit, because if you look at processing and weaving, it is still not fairly modern. India is strong in yarn, but we miss a biggest opportunity of value addition, of making fabrics, finishing the fabrics, making garments, and exporting. For China, always the growth engine has been garments. India, it never had been garment. A major share in export is always yarn. Why we are getting stuck at yarn? If our further supply chain is stronger enough and we are able to compete in quality and costing, I think nobody can stop India. Therefore, according to me, government also should get serious about ATUF and only give to the genuine people who can really invest and take advantage of this. Thank you.
Right. So before we move on to the next question, next section of our webinar on exports, I want the audience to take a poll. We have a question: what is the best step for the government to take to give a boost to the textile industry? And there are three options which you can see on your panel, and you have to just choose one option out of the three. So we will be able to instantly tell what generally the sense of the house is, what people are feeling, that whether reduction of taxes, whether reduction on the high cost of raw materials, or stopping of cheap imports, which of this is actually going to help the textile industry. So I think we are getting the sense that a much larger percentage of people, over 50%, feel that stopping of cheap imports is going to be one of the, if you have to select one, the best reason for the government to be able to boost the textile industry. Yeah, so stopping cheap imports is the highest one. 52% feel that, 24% feel reduction of taxes, and 24% feel reduction in the high cost of materials as the reasons for boosting the textile industry. Okay, there's one more question now. How can, another poll question for the audience, how can India improve its textile garment exports? This time it's exports. So whether it is reduction of production costs, reduce the time involved in exports, that means easing of export, and or the third one is reduction in high input costs such as electricity and raw material. Which of the three would be the most important reason to improve the textile garment exports? So again, you can vote in the panel next to you. And yeah, I think, of course, reduction of high input costs seems to be it's a close fight, so I will not reveal which is the other one. Okay, so reduction of high input costs, 41% feel is the most important reason to, that's the way we can improve. Second is reduction in production costs, 33% feel that. And reducing the time involved in exports is 26%. So moving on, moving on to our next section of this webinar is on exports. And I wanted, Mr. Sodhi, can you, although we can't see you, can you hear us and can you speak? Mr. Sodhi, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to address this, Mr. Sodhi. What is India's position in the global textile industry, Mr. Sodhi?
Thank you. Well, with regard to India's presence in the global market, I mean, I would like to highlight 5 points. The first point is that India is the second largest producer of textiles after China. So this gives us a huge base, although there's a big gap between the first and the second. The second factor which distinguishes us is that India is quite strong in terms of cotton. That is where our forte lies. For example, I mean, we are the #1 producer of cotton in the world. #2, we are the largest exporter of yarn. I mean, India has more than 25% share of the global cotton yarn market, and this is a big distinction. In terms of bed linen, India has the largest share of the world's largest market, that is the US market. So these are some of the strengths. Now, in terms of our overall presence, I mean, the global trade in textiles and apparel was about $800 billion in the year 2018, where China's share was approximately 30% and India's share was about 5%. So there is still a huge gap. Now, in terms of the strengths that India has in terms of its global peers, one is I would highlight that we have an ecosystem for the textile industry, and which means first of all that we have entrepreneurship, we have enterprises, we have the expertise. So this is a great strength which needs to be capitalized. And the fifth point that I would highlight, and this is a potential as well as a weakness of the Indian industry, that unlike China or other countries, Indian textile industry is not connected with the global value chains. And this is important. While in India we've been talking about, make in India, I mean, China says made by China. It doesn't matter where in the world. So we really need to integrate better into the global textile value chain. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Rughani, I want to ask you, what are the challenges and hurdles faced by the exporters of man-made fiber textiles? And considering now COVID-19 has become such a troublemaker for exporters, how is that affecting us?
Now, first I'll answer about the hurdles, and then I'll come to the COVID-19 effects. You see, #1, as I pointed out earlier, inverted duty structure is what is really making our products uncompetitive in the world. The other thing is fierce competition from a lot of these other Asian countries. You see, they have highly subsidized exports, despite of being a part of the WTO. And that's really affecting Indian exports a lot because of pricing, because of highly subsidized and support from the government, which India is not doing, and rightly so. The other one is continuation of anti-dumping duties by a lot of these importing countries on MMF products like Turkey, Peru, USA, European Union, Vietnam, etc., etc. That also hinders our scope. The other thing is, you see, on the hurdle side is these textile job works in the GST regime, they are not considered as manufacturing. They're considered as services, and there's no ITC benefit available for that. So again, that adds to the cost of the product, making it, expensive and uncompetitive. The other thing is, you see, we lack the branding. Like, we have the entire value chain, but we don't have one global brand, that has gone global. Like, any other brand like H&M or a Zara or anything. We don't have any such Indian brand, despite of everything being present in India, but not being, not being a global house. We don't have any such brands. So we need to focus on those lines. Now, there is a non-inclusion of the entire MMF value chain, like fibers and yarns are not included in the government benefits. So that also takes us back, and we cannot leverage our costs. Now we talk about the COVID-19 effect. Right now, this is just a month. Most of the other markets are also under lockdown. What is going to happen here? We still to see the domino effect. Yes, we've seen a 25% to a 35% drop in the March exports compared to the previous year, but that's bound to happen because of the lockdown. Now, first of all, mostly the exporters are going to be, looking at the near and the medium-term effects, wherein goods which are ready are to be shipped. So they'll be looking at sorting out those issues. Other thing that has come out is Debenhams in UK has filed for protection. They are offering 10 pence to a pound, and they've already sent out official emails to all the suppliers. So this is one thing. There are a lot of order cancellations, and we don't really know when is it going to, what are the actual consequences. We'll only come to know once the markets reopen, and a long time after, maybe a month or two after the markets reopen, and seeing the actual position, demand, and etc. what is happening. A lot of order cancellations have already started coming in, so that's really worrisome. And then the other thing is with the COVID-19 is, you see what happens is all exporters, to keep themselves safe from forex volatility, they hedge their currencies. Now what's happening in this case is a lot of shipments were cancelled, a lot of shipments have been delayed, a lot of payments are going to be delayed. Because of this, now they will have not only, for example, they've hedged it at 72 rupees. Today it is at 76 or nearing, it also touched almost 77 last week. So the exporters will have to pay that differential of 5 rupees, 7 rupees plus a penalty, etc. So that is also going to take a further hit. So these are the current challenges that we see because of COVID, and the future we really don't know because the domino effect is still on. So I think this year is going to be very, very difficult because of COVID-19, but let's hope for the best. But the future looks good. India has its advantages, and where people will look at India as a alternate destination, which we should capitalize on. Thank you.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Mr. Rughani, but before that, I want to ask Mr. Kapil Patare about why is it that India has been losing ground to Bangladesh and Vietnam, and how do you see that? How can we change that?
Yeah, hi. I think not just Bangladesh and Vietnam, but also countries like Cambodia, Sri Lanka, and Ethiopia. But having said this, I would not like to comment completely that we have lost the ground, but we have been losing ground due to various factors. The factors for what the India has been losing in terms of exports needs to be identified. Whereas we say that India has a vast textile industry, which actually employs about nearly 40 million employees, which is after the agriculture sector. And very few countries now are completely equipped with all such kind of resources, which is like from raw materials to finished product. India definitely has an upper hand in this segment. But countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam for that matter, have been now defined as a manufacturing hub for this for exports to the countries like US and EU markets. But the fact is, most of the raw materials from these countries imported from China or India for that matter. Now, particularly if I talk about the Bangladesh country, in Bangladesh, other than the garments sector, which is the highly labor-intensive segment, there is no industry in Bangladesh that could actually employ so many people. So, availability of a skilled labor at a very, very low salary is actually a boom in that particular country, because the people are definitely available, which is required for a particular garment sector. This country also enjoys benefits like GSP, and of course because of the skilled labor availability at low cost and the power segment, which is also less in terms of comparing to Indian economy. We also have products manufactured at a less cost. This country enjoys the benefit of access to markets with a GSP benefit, And buyers of say US and EU, which is majority of buyers for this particular country, they actually enjoy the 10% additional benefit of import duty, which is not in compared to India as such. So with a country of say India as a country of 1.30 billion kind of market, but obviously the focus definitely goes on the domestic market, and then the next focus goes on the export segment, I would say that.
So I just want to ask you, in the domestic market now, retail has grown big suddenly, and we have e-commerce as well. Are they, sufficiently sort of taking away that load? And is that why our exports, and because we didn't have, ease of exporting, we are all focusing internally domestic, which may be now possibly the next step to do because of the whole global market being in a disarray. Do you think the retail and e-commerce is sufficient in the domestic market to take care of us temporarily while this crisis unfolds?
I would say both will have a different role altogether. If I talk about the domestic market, then obviously because of the 1.30 million, the consumption of the Indian economy, the population what Indian economy supports, retail to that extent will take shape in terms of different sectors per se. But the overall situation right now where we are today, with the pandemic approach of, the pandemic approach of coronavirus all over the global, I would say, this will definitely have some kind of impact definitely on retail to the extent as of now, because it will increase the pace of retail consolidation, as all the retail giants, all the retail players would like to now consolidate themselves. As far their payouts are concerned, as far their negotiations are concerned in terms of lease agreements and with the landlords. So it's time that for some extent we would see a retail economics a little bit disturbed. The next fact is the aggressive planning of all this major retail, which was being now actually planned, would be a little bit put on a hold for that matter. We were seeing a lot of retail branches being opened at various other cities as well. So for time being, this will be put on the hold, because the mantra of consumer buying pattern would definitely change from here. If you see the earlier style of lifestyle, the more the crowd, the more the retail store was particularly crowded, the consumer buying pattern was thinking that this is the particular store which is selling a better quality of product. But now with the pandemic of knowing everything, we feel that less the store will be crowded, it will be a better way for the consumer to actually step inside the store. This is going to be bring some kind of halt definitely, but I still foresee that going way forward, our retail would be definitely looking forward for the direct 100% FDI investments in India as well. And if you talk about the e-com channel for that matter, yes, due to today's situation, e-com channel is going to definitely grow from here because of the social distancing, which is going to be a major key factor for next couple of years from here, and hence consumer would definitely like to prefer buying on e-com portal.
So obviously our industry needs a lot of help even for exports, and therefore I want to go back to Mr. Rughani on these government schemes, the MEIS, the ROSL. Are they helping our exporters? And this road tap, which has been now is a new scheme introduced, is that better for exporters?
Well, you see, government schemes do help exports, but you see what happens is they have to make sure that they cover the entire value chain. What happens is they just, like ROSL and ROSCTL are only covering made-ups and apparel. They don't include fibers, yarns, and fabrics on it. So the ROTEP should include the entire value chain. Only then and only then will this will really help sustain our exports in this situation, and then later on we can talk about our growth. So yes, the government schemes do help us, but they should make sure that the entire value chain is covered, right from fibers, yarns, fabrics, apparel, and made-ups. So the entire value chain should be covered, and nothing should be left out in particular.
Okay, I want to go over to Mr. Sodhi now. Mr. Sodhi, now obviously now we are looking at the whole scenario on the COVID-19, and I want to ask you, how is the global textile industry coping with this challenge, and are there opportunities for India to tap? Everybody is saying that this is the moment that if we can keep our numbers down, of infections, and we can spring back to life, maybe we can capture the markets that are being vacated by some other countries, our neighbors particularly, which are hit by this pandemic. What is your view?
The pandemic is having a deep and profound impact on our industry, and the impact of this will be felt for a very long period. I would like to, answer your question, the question into two parts. So in terms of the impact on the industry, let's look at the impact from the demand perspective, and second is from the supply perspective. So from the demand side, there is a destruction of demand, and this will not return. Our estimate is that for the year 2020, anywhere between 35 to 45% of the demand will be destroyed. Consumption will go down. The second point is in terms of demand that the retailers and the buyers have been badly hurt. Like some of my colleagues mentioned that some of them have insolvency and have registered for Chapter 11 proceedings. On the supply side, the impact has been very severe. So first of all, the output has come down and is likely to come down further. The workers have been dislocated. The supply chains have been disrupted. The countries which were on CFT, they were not able to get the materials. And then the raw material prices take the beating. And also the prices of two key raw materials, cotton as well as polyester, have dropped to the extent of about 35% in the first quarter. We can keep debating about
your audio is a little unclear. Because we are unable to hear clearly on what you're saying. Could I ask Mr. Juneja to just can he address also this question partly so that there is more clarity on this? Are there opportunities for India to tap, Mr. Juneja?
Hello, are you able to listen to me?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, definitely. What you asked me, there are opportunities. Definitely, from every crisis, there are opportunities, and we have to learn from the crisis. But only thing is how we are able to encash these opportunities. How we are ready. How much we are ready. One thing definitely we have learned from this crisis. Definitely, the total supply chain is broken. So what we have learned, definitely, we should not put all our eggs in one basket. I think we should be ready to prepare. We should not be solely dependent on one source of supply. I think, like what Mr. Modi says in Man Ki Baat, we should be self-reliance. I think we have to look in for the self-reliance, and we have to do the SWOT analysis. Where we are totally dependent upon import material, where we are majority of our, whether it is raw material, product, or machinery, where it is we are on the reliable on the import material. Definitely, we have looked into the indigenous manufacturing, and definitely for some of the manufacturing, we have to be dependent upon the government also for the long-term policies or the financial support. Definitely, it is very difficult to compete immediately with the existing player. Or even what Ms. Ars was saying, we are in the machinery manufacturing. There is a total market of around 15,000 crore rupees in India. And at this moment, 60 to 65% of the Indian machineries are imported. We are every year, we are importing around 9,000 to 10,000 crore of machinery, textile machinery. So there is a scope. If you see in spinning, we are self-reliance. We have the good manufacturing in India. We have the technology, we have the capacity. But weaving and the processing and the garmenting machinery, we do not have. So what we are thinking, okay, due to the resentment and due to the bad feeling, lot of manufacturing will shift to China. But it is not just like that. It is automatically it will fall into India. We have to prepare for that. And definitely, if we will not get this opportunity and cash immediately, definitely there are other players are sitting those who will encash these opportunities. we have to do a lot of things, whether it is a credit facility, whether it is a infrastructure, whether it is a manufacturing cost, whether it is a you can say land cost. So we have to look into that, but definitely we should encash this opportunity immediately. Otherwise, other players are waiting for that. It is already going to, they are already going to encash that. So one opportunity we have to encash, we should be ready to encash. So this is up to us how we are ready techno-commercial.
Right. So I think now the big question that on everybody's mind is how the lockdown is going to be lifted. Already the Prime Minister has had his conversation with chief ministers, and I think there is speculation about when will lockdown be extended, lifted. Anyway, lots of construction sites are already been approved and work has begun in some of the places. So I want to go to Mr. Pathare and ask him what could be the major challenge before the Indian textile industry after the lockdown is lifted?
There would be many challenges. I would like to highlight few of them. There could be challenges of financial or liquidity cash crunch in the industry, because the industry will have to still manage the payouts on account of salaries and fixed overheads. Also, the challenge could be the workers, the migrant workers who have actually gone back home, and we don't know like how much time they would actually take to come back. So it would take about 3 to 4 months actually, according to me, that these workers would come back. And once we start the process also, I'm sure the textile, the operations would not begin more than 30% or so. Also, the challenge could be because for the first time in this pandemic situation, we have seen the demand and supply first time actually has been impacted both altogether. So one is generation and creation of demand in the market, and at the same time, the supply chain management, which is actually not so organized in our country, is also going to be, and which is actually disrupted, which is going to be a biggest challenge to sustain that supply chain management back to track. Job securities for many of them would also be a concern, and at the same time, the raw material prices, which can give a spike, needs to be curtailed, which so that once the manufacturing actually starts back, we do not see that there is a rise of raw materials and overall overheads cost. So overall situation, I feel that yes, we do not see as an industry to go in terms of getting the operation back on track for next 3 to 4 months.
But Mr. Pathare, what are the precautionary measures? Those who are given permission, maybe let's say their factories, etc., are away from the city, not in the red zones. What precautions that should they take in order to restart their factories?
I think the major precautions could be the guidelines of WHO and the government of India, and to maintain the hygiene factor and the social distancing factor. So the layout of factories will be completely different than what the layout of the factories were earlier. A lot of health checkups would be guided through. The most important fact is the workers who are going to come back from different places, different areas, they need to be also rigorously checked about their health status or so. The factory which has a employment of in-house dormitory and few of the workers are staying inside the factory and who could not go during the lockdown period can get an added advantage, because they can start to some extent to the factory with the permissions of the government, and some kind of manufacturing will still be done, because the availability of the raw material, the availability of the fabric will be as a part of the factory inventories.
Right. And I want to now go to Mr. Aras. Mr. Aras, that isn't there an advantage therefore in automation? I mean, those which are into automation would automatically have lesser number of people. Would that be the trend also for the industry?
I think I personally expect that there will be a lot of change in the thinking of the owners of the textile mills. Except garments, garment is a labor intensive industry, but if you see outside India, in China, even garment manufacturing has been totally automated. even I know one big complex of garment making in China, in Tianjin, where the whole factory is run by 300 sew boats, that is sewing robots. If India is really serious in competing in the world market, as Mr. Juneja has rightly said, we have to have a right balance between automation as well as employment. However, India is far behind in automation, so this is a time I think we'll have to look at, because once you have an automation, once you have a digitization of the factory, it's not only advantage in cutting the cost, but it can really optimize your energy, optimize waste. It will reduce your wastage. It will also reduce rejections. So today, where India is really falling behind, why China is a leader? If you look at, China is leader on 2 points. One is quality, and second is cost. Now, these 2 things have kept China as number 1 at around 35% of the market share, and nobody could really challenge China so far. India, although we are cheaper, nearly 60% of the wages of China, we are still not able to compete because there are a lot of hidden costs in our country. Automation will do one thing for sure, that it will bring, although the initial capital cost will be higher, the recurring benefits will be quite high. And therefore, I personally see there is already automation, thinking has started in the industry. Many of the machines, are automated. For example, in spinning, ring spinning has an auto doffer to doff it automatically. Transportation in many cases have been automated partly. Many of the weaving and processing machines have a lot of automation involved. But it's not only automation. Now machines are also equipped with artificial intelligence. IoT is used, and the factories are becoming more and more digital now. And I think if India has to compete with the world with honoring the deliveries in time, giving the required quality, as well as optimizing the cost, I think a right kind of automation to a right level has to be introduced. There is no option, according to me.
Mr. Sodhi, could you comment on the possibility of the shift of business from China to, and whether India can get a share of that?
There is certainly a potential. I mean, India is the second largest producer of textiles in the world, and we see 5 opportunities. First of all, in terms of non-wovens, in particular, in technical textiles in general, there will be an increase in the demand. I mean, GearZ carried out a study on behalf of SRTPC, and we clearly highlighted that there's a potential for the current technical textile demand in India to double from the present about $20 billion to $40 or $45 billion by 2030. This is a clear opportunity. Second opportunity is investment in processing, like Mr. Aras highlighted. This will help to bring down our lead times and get into the downstream segments. The third area where we have an opportunity is to integrate into the global value chains as our competitors did. And fourth and fifth, these are twin subjects. This is to catch up on digitalization. I mean, you can call it automation or digitalization. These are 2 sides of the same coin. And last but not the least is sustainability. This is going to be very important because consumers in the West especially will become very discerning, and we clearly see these opportunities. I mean, we are quite optimistic. Please remember that our company GearZ was founded in 1929. That was just around the Great Depression. This was 90 years ago. A long time has passed since then. So we really feel that this is also an opportunity for the Indian textile industry to reinvent and restart looking at these opportunities. Pratap?
Right. Thank you. I think, one more thing I need to clarify. There was a lot of controversial discussions regarding the fact that whether any industry which restarts after the lockdown would be subject to some penal action if even one worker was infected, that they would be shut down for 3 months or something like that. The government has clarified that that was not the intention, and probably somewhere the communication has gone off. And yes, as long as you're following all the safety protocol which the government has given out, I don't think that any such action would be taken. So that is to answer some question there on this. The other thing, I want to raise it to the panel about, the technical textiles, which is we import nearly 16 billion of it. And the whole mission, technical textile mission, is that because of our various other areas growing in the country in infrastructure, these kind of requirements are there. And particularly now with PPE suits, which are required for the hygiene sector, I think a lot of potential exists in India. So I think that the question is that, are there some guidelines or protocol which the garment manufacturers or others who wish to diversify into this can follow, so that they can pick up this business as well? Who would like to answer that?
So,
Mr. Rugani? Mr. Pathare,
I
please
can
go
answer
ahead.
if you are.
yeah, so with regards to the technical textiles that for the PPE kits and various other products, I would say that the basic guidelines that government of India as of now has given is the to maintain a complete strict adherence in terms of the safety and precautions of manufacturing of this particular product. In terms of safety of workers and safety of employees are going to be a very, very crucial factor. That's the first and the key most guidelines that government has given. And of course, with the permission of government, the whole factory that has to be aligned, as I said before, needs to give a different point of view look, because as I said that one thing is we need to manufacture these kind of products, but at the same time getting the workers is going to be one more challenge that every time I would like to put forward this. But safety factor is something that right now with the manufacturing of the PPE products, or in the future manufacturing of any other products, is going to be the one of the key element which the government has actually given in point of view.
Okay. Now I'd like to
Mr.
come to the
Padure, if
question
you
of.
allow me, I would like to add.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I would like to add. Yeah. I personally believe that there is going to be a sustainable demand in India for hygiene-related products. It's not only related to PPEs, where we are talking of the face masks or the body surgical gowns, body gowns, caps, shoe covers, etc. I personally believe the overall consciousness and seriousness about hygiene in India and abroad will go up considerably. So one is PPE products, but also disposable wipes also will be, I think, used more often by people. Non-wovens is one sector out of technical textile. According to me, India has a huge scope. Even if you take PPE, we have only spun-bond capacities. Normally, if you need a mask which is approved by WHO, it is called SMS, that is spun-bond, melt-blown, and spun-bond. Unfortunately, India doesn't have much of melt-blown capacities at all. There are hardly one or two manufacturers. China is therefore exporting a lot. So India has a huge scope if we have we really invest in non-wovens from a long-term perspective, as well as wipes. Similarly, other hygiene products like diapers, etc., also will be, I think, used more and more often as a safety precautionary measures. So overall, according to me, the demand for non-woven products, whether it is spun bond, whether it is melt blown, whether it is spun lace, or whatever it is, there are different technologies involved in this. Overall, I think there's a good market in India and abroad, and it has a huge export potential. So India has to seriously look at non-woven sectors for investment, according to me.
Right. Now I wanted to raise it to the panel, about what are the suggestions that we want for the industry from the government? What do we want from the government as the industry? Can we go over, Mr. Sodhi? Can you comment first?
I think, the government and the private sector will need to collaborate on this. This is, can be divided into, the immediate actions and then, the mid to long-term actions. The immediate actions are going to be a huge financial distress on the company. In order to, pay salaries and wages and recover the fixed costs. And the second issue where the government will need to help is in the long term to create an enabling environment. And I would like to highlight, that we just need to remove the impediments that come in the way of the industry. I mean, if this is done, Indian industry is resilient, Indian entrepreneurs will rise to the occasions, and we have a good potential to take advantage of these opportunities. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Rugani?
Just unmute, Mr.
You need to
Rugani.
unmute yourself, Mr. Rugani.
Okay. Am I audible now? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Now, see, the first thing is the India is very, very strong with its pharma. So that same image, that same leeway we need to use it for our, for the PPE suits, for the masks and all that, saying that quality products do come out from India. The other thing is that what Mr. Sodhi was saying is that we should be a part of the global supply value chain. The perception of Indian textiles is that still India is a predominantly traditional textile exporter. That needs to be changed. So there has to be a mass communication strategy communicating to the world about the strengths of India's, manufacturing sector and how the textile industry has evolved over the past couple of decades. And these are the things that we should be focusing on. Right now, we were talking about opportunities for the masks and all that, but currently they are all banned for exports. So the ban should be lifted because we do have capacities on the same front. So so that we can actually capitalize on the current requirement of the world on masks and PPE suits and the other protective equipment, etc. Thanks.
Mr. Gurudas RS?
I have some 5-6 points which I feel if government is really serious. First and foremost, of course, I'm with Mr. Sodhi that, as he said, as well as Mr. Rugani, that government and industry have to work together if India wants to grab the opportunity. First and foremost, I think government should really build a conducive business atmosphere and also a right infrastructure and ecosystem. Secondly, if somebody has to put up a project, he has to undergo so many difficulties. I think we really need a lot of reforms, land reforms, monetary reforms. We also need labor reforms because our labor laws are so old. It's very difficult for someone to put up a factory. And even though government gives a clearance, you have to pass through, farmers' agitations if you want to buy a land. Then there are NGOs who will take objection for your factory. So doing a business or putting a capacity in India is not that easy. Just compare with Vietnam. I understand Vietnam is far, far friendly than India or any other country in inviting foreign investments. They're very friendly, single window clearance. Government is very, very pro-industry. Secondly, I think government really need to incentivize exports because in this particular opportunity, I think government should really give support to the exporters of high value added products. Thirdly, most important thing where India is losing is India doesn't have the FTAs, the free trade agreements with many of the leading markets like EU. It's pending for a very long time. Australia, Canada. Just take an example. In EU, the goods from Bangladesh, Vietnam and Sri Lanka are imported duty free, whereas Indian exporters have to pay 9% import duty. So you cannot become competitive. I think it's a high time that India to get part of the global market, and for that I think these important FTAs need to be cracked, and I think government has to take a lead. If the FTA with EU is signed, probably India will have a huge advantage because it's the second biggest market for India after US. Thirdly, I think as I said before, the textile industry cannot grow without a local textile machinery industry. Somehow I think our government has not paid any attention to textile machinery industry. Therefore, we are today in a stage where hardly 4,500 crores worth of machines are supplied domestically and 8 to 9,000 crores are still imported. A very, very big amount of foreign exchange is going in importing the machines. I think the industry, textile industry can really grow if textile machinery industry is also the joint ventures are encouraged, and their foreign players are invited. There are lot of leading European machinery makers are keen to come to India, but because of the red tapeism, they are not showing much of an interest. I'm pretty sure if we lay red carpet, as I said earlier, instead of red tape, many European machinery makers will come to India. The machines will be cheaper to our industry, and our industry can definitely compete much more effectively in the world market. I think we have to attract FDI in textile also, apart from the textile machinery.
Right. Yeah, that the very constructive suggestions you have given, and I take the cue from that exports, the problems on exports and the incentivizing of exports. We are going to discuss this very much in detail in our webinar, which is on 30th April, day after tomorrow, where we have the export promotion councils, etc., being part of it. So for all the attendees, please check on your mail. We will be sending you out the webinar which has been scheduled for 30th April, Thursday, at the same time, which may be useful for those who are looking at the issues related to exports. Coming to Mr. Pathare, what is your suggestion, Mr. Pathare?
I think a quick one, because Mr. Aras has briefly given many points covered. I would like to say that scaling of work in any textile industry is going to be a very, very important parameter. Except the spinning industry, I would say our general tendency has been that we add the capacities only when the orders have been received or orders have been actually won. So whereas the customers would like to see the capacities and capabilities, my point of view is it's not about just developing a large size capacity, but capabilities to run the capacities is also very important. If there are some skill development projects from the government side where the capabilities can also be looked forward, I would say it will definitely add to look forward the large size capacities, and that would definitely help the exports business as well.
Well, thank you. That's. I'd
like to add something, if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, apart from these suggestions, now there's one more thing which I keep on thinking of. Post the COVID scenario. See, currently all the exporting nations are a part of, majority of the exporters are part of the WTO. Now we should also keep in mind, seeing this current, the trade wars and what has been happening in the past, what if big countries pull out of the WTO? What is going to happen? The entire exporting, importing patterns will change. What are the probabilities? What will happen? How will actually those FTAs help if we have the FTAs in place beforehand? And how is the world market going to behave? Because see, America has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. Yeah. Because of the probably the anger on the COVID thing, it may pull out of WTO. What will happen then? The entire mechanism of WTO might fail, and then what will happen? What is going to happen to the world trade? So we should also keep that in mind and a high probability, and think of the future on those lines. So apart from this, that is also a very, very likely scenario. Mr. Soni, do you agree with this or no, since you're well versed with the world markets?
Well, I mean, the global institutions, whether it is the UN or WTO or WHO, they are all under pressure because of protectionist tendencies. So the dynamics in future could be very different. So I would like to summarize this point by saying that India as a country will need to develop certain inherent competitiveness to compete regardless of any preferential agreements, WTO or not WTO. This is what is really needed, so that we can compete without these external aid. This would really require creating a very efficient ecosystem in India in terms of reducing our costs. And there are costs which are not inherent to a company. These are part of the environmental cost. If it costs us 15% more than China to transport our goods from the hinterland to the port cities, this adds to our cost. So this is where we will really need to spend more time. How can we make our economy and the cost of doing business more efficient? How can the government pay back incentives on time so that our liquidity situation is improved and there's no backlog with the ministries and so on? These are the things that we will need to address so that we could compete globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sodhi. I think that you have summed it up pretty well. I think the new world order already awaits us. COVID-19, post-COVID, things are not going to be the same. The whole world would have changed. I think it's going to be, all the top thinkers of the world are applying their brain cells to what can be the possible rollouts in the future. And the new normal is what's going to prevail then. So even though we have a normal which we are all looking forward to, we are the new normal is actually going to prevail over this normal that we anticipate will come. And but anyway, I think efficiency, getting more efficient, relying more on the domestic market for the current time, reopening of our factories and maintaining all the protocol that has been, I think those are the elements we need to deal with. But I think the promise that we can reweave the success story of the textile, that still remains and still remains a great possibility. And I think in the new world order, India can stand strong. With that, I conclude the webinar today. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for joining this and providing wisdom and information to this through this panel. And thank you, attendees. Thank you very much for attending the Indian Textile Journal webinar. Thank you. Stay safe. Stay healthy.